I'm getting my live. Okay. And I'm live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome to Love Talk with Lete. I am Letitia Tate, also known as Coach Lete. I'm here with you today, streaming from Clubhouse, from Instagram. I am on the wrong Instagram account, y'all. So give me a moment while I get the right social media page for you all. Uh, I was wondering why stuff looked a little bit different. Welcome. I can't see who this is joining me. Say hello. Let me know where you are listening in from. Okay, I just had the wrong page. And so I am getting that together here on IG. Righty. There we go. Okay, so let's see. I'm coming in live, coming in live, coming in live. All right. Sorry for the delay, y'all. Having a little bit of technical difficulties trying to get these social media platforms live. I am Coach Lete. I am your lifestyle love coach. I am also God's love ambassador. I've been given a mandate and an expanded fiery charge by God to equip Christian business owners, leaders, professionals, to help them eliminate the overwhelm, the burnout, and all the drama that they experience in their life work non alignment. I equip them to cultivate a lifestyle of love, of harmony, of oneness, so that they can thrive in their kingdom assignment and that they can step into the greatness that God has purposed and planned for them. And so, hey, Kabadi, thank you for joining me. Welcome, welcome. And so I'm excited about what I will be sharing with you all today. I won't be before you long, Lord willing, right? I say that, and sometimes, God just has more to say when I thought that I've said enough. So this is his show and not mine. I am just the facilitator and I am the conduit that he is using. So I have been speaking last week about Be Not Conformed. God had been speaking to me so powerfully about his business owners, his Christian business owners, leaders, and professionals. And I've spoken this and I'll say it again because it's worth repeating that although you may not have the accreditation and a title as a leader, as representatives of Christ, as God's servants and vessels, we are leaders. We lead because we lead by the example of Christ, and we lead to make disciples as the Great Commission has commanded us. So we play a leadership role in what God assigns us and how he allows us to now demonstrate and operate in that place of leadership in what he gives us. That is where you cultivate the harmony, the oneness, the love relationship with deep intimacy with him so that he can instruct you in the way that you should go as you're leading the people he is calling you to serve. So last week I was speaking about how God started to speak to me powerfully about be not conformed. And so we know that Romans 12:2 tells us to be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of our mind. I also read another scripture from 1 Peter 1:14 that tells us to live as God's obedient children. Do not be conformed to the evil desires which govern you in your ignorance before you knew the requirements and transforming power of the good news of salvation. So before God, we follow the evil desires of our flesh, right? The carnality that is an enmity to God. We were following the dictates of our flesh, the world, and the devil, right? We never want to hear that, but apparently that's what it is before we know Christ. And so when we were uh, following those dictates, we were conforming to the world's image. When we become born again, we become a new creation, a new creature, and now we are required to conform to the image of God. And so he began to speak about the definition of conforming, which means to conform oneself, one's mind and character to another's pattern, to fashion oneself according to, and to conform to the same pattern. And so as we were speaking about conforming within the the conform, God began to minister to me about the form of the image that you are submitting to. And so that's what we'll be diving into today. And so we're going to be talking about how to identify this form. Okay. And so when you look at the word form, it says here the definition is the visible shape or configuration of something. So we know that when you take on a form of something, that now your visible shape becomes conformed to that. And so I think about the transfiguration of Jesus when he transformed before the apostles, right? Before his disciples. So he took on a form and that they were able to see. And then he gave me the word submit. And so when we think about submit, right, even if you submitting a form or application, you are taking on the image of characteristics about what you are submitting on that form that gives a perception of who you are. Let's say when you're filling out an application for a job. Welcome, Coach Yolanda. Thank you so for coming. It's so good to see you. When you're filling out a job application, right? On that job application, there is a bunch of list of requirements that you must see if you fit, right, the qualifications for. It is a form. It has a form of a particular position that you are going to be applying for so that you can be hired to take on those specific responsibilities. So there is a form, there is a shape that you will be fashioning after as you're submitting, right? So then he brought me to the word submit, and it says here to accept or yield to a superior force or the authority or will of another person. So when you're submitting to something, to a superior force, now we know that God is the ultimate superior force, but there are other forces that will seem superior over you that's apart from when you're apart from God, right? You think that yourself is superior, right? Many people are self-driven. They become self-sufficient. They lean on themselves for everything. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. And so you take on a form of yourself, or you can take on a form of another person, someone you're idolizing, right? We do that a lot. I've done that a lot in my years in growing, taking on, not intentionally trying to take on somebody's form, but being admiring someone, right? I didn't go to that extreme because I was able to really like my uniqueness, but I know there are others that idolize people so much to the point that they will try to take on the form of that person's personality, right? So when you think about now as leaders, as business owners, as professionals, right, that may not have transitioned into entrepreneurship, you think about the form that you take on in your workplace, the form that you take on in your business, the form that you take on as a leader. And so many of the times we have taken on the worldly form of how we handle things at our workplace, as a leader, as business owners. But there is one form that we are to conform to, and that is the image of God through Jesus Christ. And so even when we come into these areas of business, of work, right, in leadership, in wherever that place that you may be leading in, whether it's in your workplace as a business owner, you are a leader. Right? It can be in education. It can be in a form in media. It can be in any of the sphere of influences of society that God has chosen you for to lead, right? On whatever level he has assigned and designed for you. And so when we take on the worldly form and we conform to that, there are personalities, there are characteristics, there are behaviors, right? There are attitudes that come along with that conforming. And so, as Christian business owners, leaders, and professionals, we have the responsibility and the accountability to uphold a standard of kingdom excellence of God. And that is in the nature and the character and the power and the demonstration of who he is. And so when we think about the form that we are taking on in that, are we taking on that form based on what we've been told and what we have known in the business world? Or have we submitted, right? Have we accepted and yielded to the superior power and the superior force of God so that we can carry out the demonstration as business owners, leaders, and professionals that God has assigned our hand. And so when you look at when you're not, hey, Coach LaCrish, thank you for joining me. When you think about how you're in the workplace and how things get crazy and chaotic, right? We have many workplaces that have high turnovers, right? Because the places are, chaotic, right? And you don't know that until you're actually in the workplace. I've experienced that. You're in it for a little while, and then you realize there's a culture that exists in that environment. And then a lot of times you take that home, and then that begins to now saturate the environment in your home. And then now you have this work life that has this mixture of things from work coming home and things from home coming to work. And so now it brings you in this array. It brings in the dramatics, right, of the non-alignment, because there's no harmony. There's no synchronization. There's no order of God in that. And so as business owners, leaders, and professionals, as Christians, we have to uphold that kingdom excellence. It is requirement of who we are to be the example of Christ in everywhere that we go, in everything that we do, because it is in him we live, move, and have our being. And so one of the things that we don't become aware of is the things that we play a part in the environments that we are in. As believers and followers in Christ, we have the power of God's Spirit in us that is able to shift and change an atmosphere. But have we allowed ourselves to take on the form of the image of God that we are required to, and submit and yield to the power and the superior force of God so that he can lead and guide us in the way that he would have us to go in our business operations, in our professional operations, in our leadership operations. So when you take the time to become aware, right? That's one of your key things, is to become aware. That's how you begin to identify. Many of the times we don't identify because we are moving and shaking. We are busy. We're doing things. We're on the go. And so the enemy loves to keep us distracted, busy, weighed down, tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, burned out. Because when you are in the characteristics of that, you're unable to find, you're not thinking about the awareness of what needs to shift within you to now shift the atmosphere, the situation in a direction of what you may be encountering. And so as God was speaking to me about what form are you submitting to? Are you submitting to the form of the ways of the world that you've been taught? Or are you submitting to the form of the ways of God in the destined greatness that he has already assigned and established for you, that comes already fixed? It already is established. We have to follow the steps, right? The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and not because we try to order them and have him to follow what we think we're following the order of. It is actually the steps that he has actually ordered, and now we are walking in obedience to follow those steps, because he's established a purpose and a plan of his own for us that is greater than anything we can ask, think, or imagine, right? So when you look at taking on this form and you take the time to identify, become aware of what that is. Many of times we carry on emotional attachments, behaviors, cycles, behavioral cycles, attitudes, things that have been tracing us from our past, from childhood, for some it could be from infancy, from teenage, from adolescent or young adult, even adult. So there's always a trace, and most of the time it comes down to a track of you having some form of relational relational pain or trauma that's happened in your childhood. And so that follows you throughout your life. And so as you're becoming, as you're moving and shaking, as you're pursuing whatever you're pursuing, those behaviors, those cycles, those emotional patterns and attachments, they begin to follow you. And it is not until when you become born again that God begins to now illuminate those things. And there will be situations that may occur that will start to bring those things up and bring them into the forefront so that you are able to become aware, to identify those things. So now you can submit it to God so that he can lay the axe to them and root them out so that he can fill you with something greater. But are we, as business owners, leaders, and professionals, are we taking the time to get with God to truly come into the aligned order of greatness that he has destined for us? And so one of the things, hey, Coach Monica, thank you for joining me. One of the ways that we do that is becoming aware and looking at the track and the trace of the emotional and behavioral patterns that the enemy really makes a path for himself to find his hook in so that he can now begin to disrupt, delay, discourage, and keep you separated in these relational areas that we need to live and survive, because God created us for a relational existence. Everything that we do is relational. So when we look at all of these things that we don't recognize that have traced us, and they begin to spill over into all the areas of our life because we haven't taken the time to really get into the intimacy of oneness, the intimacy of harmony and love with God, so that he can truly allow the Holy Spirit to illuminate those things, to burn those things out and mold us into the beautiful masterpiece that he has already designed for us. And so today I want you to take the time to become aware, heighten your awareness so that you can identify any emotional attachments, any behavior patterns, any attitudes, any cyclical things, any things that you have now noticed have become a cycle. The enemy may present it the same way, but it still has the same root. So to go and look at that root and see where you can track it and where it has continued to follow you. And when you're not seeing the things that you've been praying to God for and asking for, where the enemy would want you to be discouraged and disappointed, thinking that God is not going to do what he promised you, is because he doesn't want you to become aware, because now you will have the time to be still, to go present it before God, and then God can reveal his truth. Because the enemy loves to give us a false sense of truth, and he distorts it, he taints it to make it appear to be something that it truly is not. And then when we get into this intimacy and oneness in harmony with God, that begins to now bring us into the power, authority, and dominion of who we were created to be. And it makes his impact and his influence ineffective. So we must heighten our awareness. So this week, I want you to take time to sit down in your quiet time with God and begin to identify the emotional attachments, the behaviors, the patterns, the cycles, the beliefs that you now can say, this has been following me. So I'm not seeing the fullness and the best that God has for me, because this is the blockage that's hindering God's best and for me to step into the greatness that God has for me. And so I'm going to leave you guys there with that. I'm going to really be digging deep into that the rest of the week and for the weeks to come, because I do know that we are in a very high, crucial time in this hour where God is calling his children deeper and higher, right? Deeper in intimacy with him, so that we can go and ascend higher in where he is calling us to, so that we can truly operate and demonstrate the authority, the power, and the dominion that God has given to us to be in those places that he has called us to serve in those areas and spheres of influence that he's calling you to, because it may be more than one. And so this is the time that you have to go deeper to go higher. And many times we try to escape this process, but it's necessary because the enemy has found those blocks and he continues to play on that blockage to keep you from truly coming in to who you are. Welcome, Selena. Thank you for joining me so much on LinkedIn. He wants to keep you from truly functioning as the leader that God has called you to be in the excellence that God has required for you to walk in. And so I want you to take some time to identify those patterns, those behaviors, those cycles, and anything internally, emotionally, mentally, behaviorally, and even physically in your health that is keeping you from stepping into the destined greatness that God has for you. And so I'll be talking more about this. I'm also having an upcoming workshop on February 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Zoom. And so this is my drama to destiny, unleashing the greatness in you, because the enemy wants us to stay in the chaotic drama that keeps us from the destined greatness that God has for us. So I'm excited about that coming up. So I will be giving details pretty much throughout the next couple of weeks about that, and just be sharing more of my heart about God wanting us to form and submit to his image. And his image is the royal image, which is royal image coaching and consulting, right? The royal image of God, so that we can step into our greatness. So thank you so much for joining me. I pray you all have an amazing, blessed rest of your day. I'm just excited to continue out in the rest of the week. Got so many great things that have been coming up. And so I'm just excited to share that with you all. So just be on the lookout. I may have some pop-ups and things like that, but a lot of great and amazing things. And I want you to get to the great and amazing things that God has for you too. So blessings on the rest of your day. I will see you on Friday with more Love Talk with Lete, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I will be showing up throughout the week with some pop-ups to share some more great insights with you. So blessings on the rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.